All right, so at this time, I would like to call the special Board of Finance meeting to order for June 10th, 2020. If everyone could please rise for the pledge. I pledge allegiance
Allegiance
to the
the
flag
flag,
United
States
United
of
States of America,
to the
to
republic,
the republic
which stands
which stands
one
one
nation,
nation
under God,
under God,
indivisible,
indivisible,
liberty,
and
and
liberty
justice
and
for all.
justice for all.
All right, we'll do roll call. Ted Dumaine,
Yeah.
Kim Medlin,
Here.
Don Cavella,
Here.
Travis Irons,
Present.
Gary Stalaboyne is absent. Matt Radin,
Present.
and Keith Shealy, I believe, is also absent. And Tom Sinkowitz. Matt, so you would have voting rights in place of Gary.
All right.
All right, acceptance of the minutes from the May 20th, 2020 meeting. Minutes were posted and distributed. Questions or comments?
Mr. Chair, this is Travis. I move that the meeting minutes are accepted as presented.
I'll
Very
second.
good. Is there a second?
I'll second.
Okay, Don, second. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye, opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries. All right, next item under new business. To discuss and accept and act upon the fiscal year 2019 audit report. Before we get started, I did want to check and see, did everybody successfully get the attachments that were sent?
I
Look
did.
through the financials?
Yes.
Should be 2 attachments, correct?
Correct.
Yep.
Okay. Just wanted to make sure everyone had gotten them because I know it can be technical issues and things don't always go through. So that's good. Hope you had, I know this was kind of short notice, so I apologize for that, but I hope you had maybe a little bit of time to flip through them. I also want to thank our auditor for having a very quick turnaround for having produced the report and then be able to make himself available for this meeting tonight because as we all know, we were hoping to have this done a long time ago, but there were delays in the process. So happy to finally be at this point to be able to review the financials and also have discussion and ask questions directly to our auditor related to that. So if there are no comments at this time, I would like it to turn it over to our auditor, who I believe should be on here.
Hi, Tom. How you doing?
Kyle, hi, thank you.
Thank you very much. Thanks, everyone, for getting together on short notice. I know you probably haven't had a significant amount of time to read through the financial statements, but hopefully what I can do for you this evening is cover some of the key areas, the important areas that I think you should have your eyes on. And certainly, if you have any questions for me along the way, don't hesitate to ask, or if you want to wait till the end and ask, that's fine too. I'm fine with either. Sometimes it's easier if you just jump in and kind of ask while we're talking about a certain area. But let's figure out how to share my screen here, and hopefully. Can everyone see the slides?
Yes. Affirmative.
We can.
I'm good.
Okay, great.
Yep.
So we're going to go over the town's 2019 financial statements, as well as we'll get into the compliance report, which is the federal single audit and the state single audit as well. Thank you to Kelly, and I know the school spent a lot of time getting documentation together for us over the last month and a half. A big effort, but I'm glad that we're here and we're able to present this information to you. So the town's general fund, your total fund balance increased by just under $200,000 in fiscal 19. You had unassigned fund balance of $9.1 million, and basically that represents 19% for fiscal 19 operating budget. Typically speaking, we would recommend a healthy target be anywhere from 8 to 16% of your budgeted expenditures. So the town is certainly above what we would consider to be a healthy rate, which is a good place to be, especially with what's happened over the last few months, not really knowing how that's going to impact the state funding that's coming through. It's nice for you to have that excess, flexibility. We
Kyle, what was that rate you said that you recommended?
typically somewhere between 16% would be healthy.
Thank you.
Sure. So I went back as far as I could to look at your older financial statements, and I was able to pull information dating back to 2014. So as you can see here, your overall fund balance in your general fund has grown pretty steadily, dating back to 2014, with your overall unassigned fund balance growing pretty much at the same rate. Context of where you are now compared to where you were, 5-6 years ago. In 2019, your revenues in the general fund were above budget, budgeted amount by $126,000. That includes your property taxes, which were $702,000 above what was anticipated for fiscal 19. That's a combination of two things: certainly a strong collection of prior year balances and a collection of your current year assessments above what you had budgeted. If you were to look at your total tax revenue compared to your assessment, you had 97% collection on your current year assessments. Again, if we were to pull a number out of the air, we would consider anywhere between 90% and 100% to be a healthy collection rate. So the town in fiscal 19 certainly fell in that category. The revenues that were, so your property taxes were $702,000 above what was anticipated, but your revenues in total were only $120,000 above what was anticipated. There was some state funding specifically related to special education that was under budget. And I think that's pretty normal across most municipalities. In order to maintain your level of effort for your special education, you've got to spend at least more in the current year than you did in the prior year on a per pupil basis on your special education costs. So sometimes you don't always get to draw down what you're anticipating you'll be able to for sped money, and that really does drive budgets one way or the other in across the state. Your expenditures were $1.2 million lower than what was anticipated, appropriated for. The three main categories with significant savings were employee benefits were $490,000 lower than anticipated. Town road aid was $172,000 lower than anticipated, and education was $308,000 lower than anticipated. Now that's when we're comparing to your final budget, because I know that your appropriation did increase in the middle of fiscal 2019, $540,000 or so. And so when we're comparing budget to actual, we're comparing your final budget to the expenditures. So just to provide some context for you. Taking a look at your WPCA fund, your operating revenues were $1.84 million compared to $1.76 in the prior year, so a steady increase. Your operating expenses were just a tick under what they were in the prior year at $2.12 million, to an operating loss of $281,000 in 2019 compared to an operating loss of $384,000 in the year before it. Overall, that fund has a net position of $8.2 million. The majority of that net position is tied up in capital assets net related debt, but $972,000 of it is what would be considered unrestricted that you could use for operations. Has two pension plans really. The first is associated with the state. The state takes full ownership of that liability, so it never actually gets posted to your government-wide balance sheet. But you do have your own town private pension plan. So at June 30, 2019, that plan was funded at 84.28%. If you were to look back over the course of 6 years, generally speaking, the town has not made the full actuarial required contribution, the ARC that your actuary gives you. I think you've probably made about 2/3 of your required ARC payment. But the economy's done well, and if we were to look back to 2014, your plan was funded at 82.5%, versus 2019, you're still a little bit over 84%, and that's without making the full ARC payment every year. So, I mean, I'll leave it to Kelly to explain why that wasn't being. I'm assuming is to use your assets more appropriately and all into your pension plan. That's pretty well funded. We consider this a very well funded pension plan.
Kyle, going back to 2014 and forward, how much of it was funded of what the actuarial recommendation would have been? Like, were we only hitting halfway, or
how about 2/3?
I would say 2/3 too.
2/3?
Yeah, about 2/3. Yeah.
Anywhere ranging from 2/3 to about 75% in a given year.
Yep.
So your total liability is $27.7 million. And you've got fiduciary assets available to pay those costs down of 23.4. So that's how you get to your 84.28% funded. The things I always try to focus on when I'm looking at a pension plan are the assumptions, because we work with a lot of municipalities that are using mortality tables that are really old. They're still dated back to 2000. And when you adjust it upward to a more current fiscal year, you're going to see a significant jump in your liability. So town for its pension plan is using mortality tables graded up to the year 2017, which is great. You shouldn't see a significant spike when you start to move that up to 2018. You're not going to see a big jump in 1 year. And you're also using an investment rate of 7%. I don't have it offhand, but I think your total investment weighted rate of return in fiscal 19 was about 5%. But if you were to look back to the 3 or 4 years prior, 7% is a pretty good average of what your assets have worked at. And you've got two plans for your OPEB plan, one of which is with the state of Connecticut. And again, that plan also does not show up on your balance sheet, but your private plan does. OPEB plan, kind of similar to pension. For a long time, we're just buried into the notes of your financial statements, buried into your RSI, but they never actually made it as a liability to the face of your financial statements. And the first time you probably would have seen that happen is 2018, when the GASB standards changed and said, you've got to put that liability on your books. And that's really when everyone started to realize, okay, we've actually got to start to fund this. So as of June 30, 19, you're funded at just a little bit under 7%, which does look low when you're comparing it to your pension plan. But again, across the state, the focus on OPEB plans for most, if not all municipalities, it was mostly disregarded and not funded. So you guys have started to fund it, which is, a great thing. I think you'd be in a worse position if your pension plan wasn't funded much at all and your OPEB plan was at 7%. But I think if you, look at them in tandem, trending in a good direction. One thing to note when I was talking about the pension plan was your ARC. The OPEB plan has something similar to your actuarially determined contribution, very similar. So in fiscal year 19, you met about 45% of that ADC, and in 2018, you hit 42%. One thing I want to note, the liability is a little over $8 million, and your plan assets are a little over $600,000. And typically, when we see a plan that isn't funded more than 20%, it would be we feel like it's a little aggressive to use a discount rate of 7%, which is what you're using. Typically speaking, if you're going to have your assets work at a certain rate, they may hit 7%, but is that really material to the total amount of assets compared to the liability? So that might be something you think about with your actuaries and consider lowering your discount rate. You did decrease your long-term rate of return from 7% to 4% in fiscal 19. The discount rate still stood at 7%. So just food.
Okay.
As we get into the findings portion of this, really split it out into two areas. The first is some of the restatements that we made. I think anytime you've got a new firm coming in and looking under rocks that maybe aren't looked under every single year, these sorts of things are gonna pop up. The most significant restatement that we had was your Eastern Connecticut program. It was shown as a note in your financial statements. The way that self-insured activities should be shown in financial statements are as an internal service fund, proprietary fund. So I think if you were to proprietary financial statements, you're going to see that we accounted for an internal service fund for both the town and the Board of Education. And that's something you would have seen. If you were to look at some of the other members of the plan and look in their financial statements, Tall and Coventry, you're going to see they're accounting for their internal service funds for their ECHIP under their internal service funds. So it's more of a presentation issue than anything else. Because like I said, the information historically has been provided in your notes, but that presentation-wise, it's going to look a little different this year. And I think in talking with Kelly, the town and the school are going to start to make sure that they utilize the fund that they already have set aside for Egypt to match the activity, the monthly activity that they're receiving from the program. The second portion of the findings is not necessarily restatements, but general recommendations. The main one being, what we talked about a little bit last time I was on the call with y'all, is that the Board of Education should really keep their federal and state grants in a financial reporting system rather than using Excel, which is what they're using now. It just makes it a little bit easier on them when the audit comes. It certainly allows for better internal controls over financial reporting. And when the Board of Ed or the Finance Committee or, Kelly or Ron in general want to get a sense of, what grant money has been received compared to what the budget is, or just in general, if there's an opportunity to draw down more funds, having that information readily available on a month-to-month basis is going to be better for everyone, yourself included. So that's a recommendation that we have. And that was certainly one of the bigger holdups in the audit as well. The second piece has really already been addressed, but because when we showed up to do the audit in October, November, this wasn't available for us, we did include it in the finding. And that's just making sure your general fund cash count is reconciled from bank to book on a monthly basis, and that unbalanced amounts are reconciled to the prior year audited financial statements. Kelly did put in a lot of work to get that done and ready for the audit when she hired in January. I know that her and I have talked a little bit about getting together either virtually or, hopefully in person as things get better here, and making sure that all of the audit entries that we recommended are being appropriately posted to your financial reporting system so that when it's time for the 2020 audit, none of these issues will be present.
Correct.
So that's the financial statement piece of the audit. The other piece is completing our single audits over your federal programs and your state programs. So any entities that receive more than $750,000 in federal awards, we're required to select certain programs and basically make sure that you're using the money appropriately on eligible costs, that you're reporting it to the state timely, that you're meeting your level of effort, compliance requirements. And so from a federal standpoint, we selected both special education and Title I Part A as your major programs. We completed all of our testing and we had no non-compliance to bring to your attention, which is good news. From a state standpoint, we selected 4 major programs, which were school readiness, municipal grants and aid, energy cooperation, and the town aid road grants. And we tested those for compliance as well in accordance with the Connecticut state single audit requirements. And again, we have no non-compliance to those programs. So if you have any questions, I'd be more than happy to address them for you now. If something comes up, because I know this was short notice, that you see in the financial statements that maybe you didn't get a chance to look at yet, please don't hesitate to reach out to get our contact information. Give me a call, give me an email, and I'll be happy to help.
So Kyle,
Yes.
can you hear me?
Yep.
Okay. So on a recommendation going into next year, when we got to do the audit again, to try to expedite the Board of Ed side, this is something that Kelly and I have been talking about as far as what could be done differently, since, in the end, I know they were the final, step in completing the audit, and, had to go back and forth with you for quite a bit. So the recommendation that you had said as far as the state and federal grants, they can certainly do a better job as far as recording those.
Certainly. Yeah, absolutely.
Okay.
Maintaining them in a financial reporting system would definitely be recommended, and trying to put the puzzle together after the years happened, more challenging than, posting cash receipts and expenditures to a general ledger as they're happening.
Okay. And another thought I had is, do you think it would make any difference if, this is assuming that, we get back to somewhat normal times in the next year and are able to do more meetings in person, but do you think it would make a difference of you as the auditor coming out to meet with the Board of Ed, the business department?
Oh, absolutely. I think it would have made a world of difference.
Okay.
Unfortunately, we weren't afforded that ability, just with the timing of they were ready for us to come out and do the audit. And when COVID happened,
Yeah, no, I know with COVID, but I'm of course thinking way early on in the process as far as what might have been able to get out of the way, early, and if it had been ready, for you to come out and review. It's just one of those things that, in eventually wanting to talk back to the Board of Ed, to our Board of Ed chair and our superintendent, want to make some suggestions. And they also have in the past come up with corrective action plans of any inconsistencies, any discrepancies, anything that was not reconciled properly, to try to improve for the coming year. Because obviously we don't want to keep going through this process and having repeats. Particularly on the Board of Ed side. So anything that they can do to try to make it run smoother, I definitely want to do follow up on after.
Yeah, absolutely. We did reach out in the beginning of the audit procedure and ask for trial balances. This would, be dating back to September, October, and I think there was a bit of confusion on the Board of Ed side as far as procedure. I know historically the prior auditors had, either assisted or, created trial balances to some degree for the Board of Ed. So, that wasn't something we were necessarily comfortable with. And so I think that left a lot of questions on the Board of Ed side because they didn't know how to produce it.
Yeah. And, the two factors, of course, going into next year's too, is that, we'll be going through the process again with your audit firm. And I don't think we'll be changing town finance director within the next year. So, so those two things particularly, I think should help with consistency, and kind of having gone through it once now, hopefully going smoother next year.
Yeah, absolutely. The second year audits are always a little bit easier than the first. That's for sure.
Yep.
Kyle and Kelly, two quick questions. Maybe I just missed, maybe the audio dropped out during some of the explanation. I'm on the PDF attachment that was emailed out. It's the one of the drafts, and it's on page 9. Let's see. It's give you a second to get there, and it's under financial statement findings, current year findings, and then material weaknesses. So let me know when you get there.
Yep, I'm with you.
All right. So the second bullet point under condition, town did not record an offsetting asset for its tax title deferred liability, totaling approximately $367,000. I'm just curious how did we come across that, and what's the corrective going forward on that, because that seems a little large.
So that was your suspense account, and you had recorded the suspense account appropriately as a liability, as a deferred liability, but you should have had a corresponding asset on the books as well, so it nets to zero. I think it was maybe combined with your overall tax receivable, or maybe it just wasn't noted. And so in your suspense, we kind of realized it needs to have an offsetting asset in order to be GASB compliant. I'm sure Kelly can speak to what her plan is moving forward in order to make sure that those two match each other at the end of the year.
Well, I'm going to end up booking both when I receive a payment out of the suspense account, reducing the asset, and then booking and recording the appropriate liability as I receive payments from the suspense account.
Okay. All right. Yeah. And I know, I think at the previous meeting, we had taken action on the current year suspense list as well. Is that something that we're receiving in potential payments from on a monthly basis that would lead this to be reviewed, or is this more of like
it's not
semi-annual?
Yeah, it's not. Yeah, it's periodically. I can't say it's monthly. It's just when we receive payments against the suspense. Karen and I worked on this together, and we had to create, come up with what we think, we'll be collecting in a suspense account. We had discussion on it. So it's not we receive suspense payments every month, but periodically, yeah, I'll receive a suspense payment. Sometimes they're good. Sometimes it's a minimum amount, for a car or something.
Right.
So.
Okay. Thank you. And my second question was just regarding how the eChip financials are being reported. Could you just explain that one again from the top? I want to make sure I'm following this correctly.
Absolutely. So if you were to go over to the financial statements themselves, and PDF pages 25, 26, and 27.
Okay.
Last year, what you would have seen is just your business type activities, your Water Pollution Control Authority fund. This year, you're seeing that internal service fund next to it. And that's a combination of the town and Board of Education's eChip, where you're going to see your employer and employee contributions and corresponding benefits on page 26 that ultimately lead you to what your net position is. And so anytime a municipality is self-insured, you've got to record the amount of contributions you're putting into your insurance plan and then the claims that are coming out. And GASB recommends or requires really that they show up on the financial statements as an internal service.
Okay.
So if you were to look at the top of page 25 here, you're going to see that you forwarded the plan about $580,000. So that's the amount of money, the amount of cash they have on hand that the town, because when claims come in for payment, you've got to have cash on hand in order to cover those claims. So some other entities that are in your fund, in the ECHIP fund, they'll advance funds right before year end. Plainfield doesn't do that. You just keep a cash balance on hand and then make the payments when they're required throughout the year.
Okay, so this is something that we would be looking just to change the reporting style on our statements. Is the Board of Ed going to have to make a corresponding change as well?
So the Board of Ed is included.
Board Ed.
This is a combination of both
Okay.
the county and the Board of Ed.
All right.
I record activity in the ECHIP in the town side for the school and the Board of Ed. I mean, for the school and the town. And it's in the town's Fund 39. And now we're just going to make sure it's reported as a separate internal service fund.
Okay.
Hi, this is Kim. I have a question, and this might end up going to Kevin and/or Kelly. So Kyle has specifically suggested that the Board of Ed transition to a financial reporting system. How quickly can we transition to a program like that for Board of Ed?
Oh, the Board of Ed just got a new accounting system, Infinite Vision. So I used Infinite Vision before in the past. You just could set up a separate fund for, say, federal grants, and then you would create your accounts. You'd create assets, liabilities, revenue, and expenditures, and then they could just record them right there. It's just setting
them
up the general ledger, I think, is what it'll need with assistance with.
Okay.
Yeah, I think I'm going to have to talk with Ron about that and how to, what accounts he needs set up, to record them.
Okay.
But they have a new system, so I'm pushing for July 1.
Okay. Okay, perfect.
Yeah, and that can be tough.
I sent the email out to him today to start talking about it.
That can be tough because, I'm sorry, Tom, go ahead.
I was going to say, Kelly, I know we're going to give that some time, obviously, like you said, through July, and we'll say through August, maybe sometime in like September, we can circle back around on this at a Board of Finance meeting and just, looking ahead to the future audit, how are we coming along, obviously, with the accounting on the Board of Ed side, with the accounting system.
Right.
Okay.
Okay. Good idea.
All right. Kyle, were you saying something?
Yeah, I was just going to add in, it's tough because we're in June at this point and the fiscal year ending is June 30. So, all of 2020's activity has been maintained via Excel, but it'll probably be a good amount of work to get it into the system, but I think it'll be worth it for everyone including Ron, because when we come back and we ask for the information, have to compile it's already ready. So
we will be expecting them to put prior to the current fiscal year into the system. So we're going to ask them to put historical figures in there as well to create a history.
The system that they have before iVision, I don't know what they have. I don't know what that system is.
I think it's Phoenix, but
I'm assuming they could do it, but I don't know. Phoenix?
Yeah, I think they use Phoenix, but I don't think they.
Yeah, I don't. Yeah, I've never used Phoenix. Yeah, okay. So I don't know if they, how to use creating a chart of accounts in that system. I don't know.
So they won't be putting fiscal year 2020 in there into the new accounting system. They're just going to start with 21.
I'm pushing for 21. And then I don't know if on the town side, Kyle, I don't know if you think this is a good idea or not. if for the fiscal year 20, if I do separate funds, one for federal and one for after school program, and record, because I can see based on their bank statements, the amount of money that they're receiving, for revenues and for grants. If I record it on the town side, and then in July of this, next month, they start that up, and I can roll it off of my, my funds, push it over to the school. Is that a good idea?
Yeah, I mean, anything would be helpful at this point.
Okay.
That we just have some sort of trial balance to go off of. It's probably not a great long-term solution, but for purposes of the 20 audit, and making sure we don't fall behind again like this year, it couldn't hurt.
Because I started working on that. So I have the federal on the town side, a separate fund, and after school as a separate fund.
Okay.
So, and they tie to the bank statement, so you have the activity there. So I'm just thinking the federal one will have to be more detailed, your Title I.
Right.
I think we lost you there for a sec, Kelly.
Yeah.
Oh, me? Oh, sorry.
I think I lost you after Title I.
Yeah, Title I, I was gonna add, Kyle, I should have, each revenue associated with the federal grants, correct? And you want to see which revenue received?
Yep, absolutely. And when you're working with Ron on setting up his trial balance within Infinite Vision, which is actually a really great software, we enjoy using it from an auditor standpoint. He doesn't have to have one fund for federal, one grant. I mean, he can have one fund for each grant. They roll over year after year after year. So
you're right.
One for SPED, one for Title III.
Yes, you're right. Okay.
Easier.
Okay. All right. Good idea. Okay.
Kevin, anything to add? Any suggestions or thoughts from your end of what we can try to do to make the 20 audit report go smooth?
I think the suggestions that were given so far are a good start, and the communication line between Kelly and Ron to continue, and that what was just mentioned, I think, is a great start. And I don't know how far back they want to go to anything that they. If you're creating new accounts for them on the Infinite, what can you help them with, Kelly? That's the only thing.
Yeah, like Kyle just said, I'll just have to. He'll have to create the accounts, his numbers, and I'll just explain. Each grant can have a separate fund because they just keep running. I think a 2-year cycle. I think a lot of those grants are.
Yep.
So I can assist with that. And then the school investment, recording when we send money over to the Board of Ed, he can record that as a revenue, and then he can have his expenditures for the whole school year, related to the budget, accounted for.
I also want to say that I know it's unfortunate that we're this far along in the calendar year for the completion of the audit, but with the recommendations that were just given and the fact that we're about to start it for the next year, it's somewhat of a help because you have a good starting point to say this is what we should be doing and to keep going forward.
And Kelly, another thing that we can revisit with the Board of Ed when you meet again with Ron and talk about the reporting, as far as not being in Excel and being in the accounting system. We can also revisit the idea that it's got to be going back like 2 or 3 years ago of some type of reporting back to the Board of Finance on a somewhat regular basis, maybe not monthly, but my thought is that maybe going forward, it will be easier to report back to us on where the money is being spent, because that's been an ongoing question that I know Board of Finance has asked many times on a month-to-month basis, or maybe even a quarterly basis of, Ron or Ken would answer it verbally, but I think it would be really helpful if we could actually get some type of report generated and sent out as an attachment to the Board of Finance for us to thumb through and see, where's the money going? Where is it being spent? What's coming in? What's going out? Because I think that would also help us not just looking at the financials annually, but also when we prepare for budget season. I think that would help too, when we're having to make some decisions and suggestions to Board of Ed.
Okay. Definitely.
I assume that these findings are being presented to at least Ron and Ken and Christy,
Mhm.
or is this being presented to the entire Board of Ed at a separate time?
The backup was sent up to Ron and Ken, so they have all the comments up there. And myself and Ron have to respond back to the comments to the state OPM. So we'll work on that together and get that off, hopefully soon, like tomorrow.
If the Board of Ed wants me to present, just like I did with the Board of Finance tonight, I'm more than happy to, but they haven't reached out yet.
All right, maybe because I think just because they get mentioned so many times, because there's a lot of collaboration here between the financial statements, how things are being presented, and trying to make sure the information is as symmetrical as possible to the viewers. That they, it would have been convenient if we could have had them here tonight. I know they have a meeting tonight as well, so obviously they can't be part of this, but make sure everybody's on the same page. Tom, maybe that's something.
Yeah, that's a good suggestion. Yeah, I can follow up with that. All right, other questions for Kyle?
Mr. Chairman, this is Travis. I guess just an observation and possibly a two-part question. During Mr. Ciccatelli's short tenure with the town, he stated that as a good accounting practice, it's recommended that the town's audit firm be changed every 3 to 5 years. I guess he recognized that we did have a little bit of an allegiance to Mahoney Sable previously, and that's how Markham was engaged to conduct the current audit. I'm just wondering if his statement about changing audit firms every 3 to 5 years had some merit, and if that's a plan that's going to be put in place going forward.
Yeah, Kyle, what is your recommendation when it comes to longevity, how long you stick with a firm for auditing?
Yeah, that's a great question. I think clients that we work with should probably never change auditors, and other municipalities definitely should every 3 years. But no, I think that there are a lot of familiarity threats when you've got someone looking at something for 5, 6, 7 years. They just assume that number hasn't changed year over year, so there are problems with it. Specifically, when you change to a new auditor after having someone been here for a long time, they're going to look under rocks that maybe the previous audit firm was comfortable with and didn't look under. Occasionally, it requires a restatement, but it's probably healthy for everyone to switch to a new firm at some point. So it's recommended for sure. Whatever that limit to be would be at the discretion of the Board of Finance.
Right. I think within my term of employed prior with the town of Plainfield, we had 3 different firms. So they were switched about every 5 years.
Does the state have any guidelines on that? State of Connecticut have any guidelines? Somewhere I thought I heard that it was mandated every 3 years. Am I wrong?
I believe it's mandated to go out to bid every 3, but I don't know if you're required to switch every 3.
Okay.
I do a lot of work in Rhode Island, and they're getting to a point too where they're requiring municipalities to roll off at least every 8. So I know that they're starting to create some guidance in that department.
Thank you.
Yeah, I mean, it's not a bad idea for us to revisit this discussion again. Obviously, we already know we'll be sticking with the firm through the 20 audit report, but come 2021, obviously discuss again and see what the plan is. Continue on or be searching for another.
Yeah, don't go too far away. It's only 5 months from now.
I know. Travis, did you have another part to your question besides that?
I just wanted to say, you know, obviously what I've seen from Kyle and Markham and, you know, judging from Kelly's interaction with them, it's been nothing but harmonious. So, you know, don't think in any way that I'm anxious to see a change. It's just as a matter of a good accounting practice. If that's what we should be considering, maybe it's something that we need to keep in the back of our mind. But I mean, all in all, you know, bravo for the presentation.
No offense taken. Thank you.
All right, any other questions for Kyle?
Just if Kyle could do me a favor and reset me back to host, I have some housekeeping issues to finish up with.
Absolutely. Let me just figure out how to do that.
You hover over my name on the right-hand side, hit the More button, and revert me back to host. There we go. Thank you.
Okay, great. Thanks, everybody. I appreciate it. Have a good night.
Kyle,
Thank you. Thank you, Kyle.
Thank you.
All right, so now that Kyle has concluded, unless Kelly or Kevin have anything else they'd like to add, I would be looking to entertain a motion to accept the fiscal year 2019 audit report.
So moved.
Okay, Matt?
I'll second.
Don? Okay. Any other discussion? Hearing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstentions? Motion carries to accept the fiscal year 2019 audit report. All right, and with that, I move on to citizens' participation. I did not receive any emails or any phone calls or questions beforehand. I believe I saw Mr. Peterson as a citizen on here. I don't know if he has anything.
Nothing tonight. Thank you.
Okay, very good. Want to give him the opportunity. And Kevin, I assume you haven't gotten any emails or anything regarding questions?
Correct. I just
Okay.
want to add one more thing. Now that we have a completed and voted on audit report, and I have a PowerPoint myself for the annual report other than his report. I will work with Kyle to talk about adding his section into the PowerPoint that I've started off with and see if we can actually get that ready for a annual meeting to conclude the process.
Yes.
Kevin, would that be a Zoom meeting too?
We don't know yet. I know the state of Connecticut, I'm on the Wednesday meetings with the governor's call, and they keep asking the same questions. And this is going to be something we have to worry about in the very near future is how do we then entertain stopping Zoom and going back to regular meetings? The problem we're having is the numbers. The governor comes up with the numbers of 10 people inside of a building for a meeting. Well, obviously we have a problem right off the bat. We want public participation, and it would be appropriate to have it, I would guess, probably at 50. And that way we can have people come in to view the annual meeting or whatever else you have for a meeting, normal meetings. If you have a town meeting, you have to worry because it could get, what we have, sometimes 300, 350.
Yeah.
So that's going to be a while for that one. But I think if we just have normal meetings, we can space people out. We did a great job of spacing out the auditorium anyway, so that when we're getting ready to go back, it's ready to run. And we can easily fit, up to inclusive of this board and another 35 people in the audience. So I'm hoping that that happens soon. Unfortunately, from the information I'm getting from the state, it doesn't look like that's going to happen until a minimum August.
But for the record, though, Kevin, that Board of Ed has already resumed meeting in person, right?
Without public input, you are correct. They have been meeting, like tonight, they are meeting in the cafeteria, and they are
Right.
spreading out wide all over the cafeteria to try to fall underneath that guideline for 10 people. But that means no one from the public can really come in and participate.
Yeah, and they're the only board or commission that's done that, right?
So far, yes.
Yeah.
Okay.
Okay.
And we keep on asking the question, can we start doing this up? Sure, we could, but you don't know who's going to walk in the door and want to be part of the meeting.
Yeah.
We don't want to be turning people away.
Yeah, that's not an appropriate thing to do.
Right.
No. Okay. If there is nothing else for citizens participation, I would entertain a motion to adjourn.
I move we adjourn.
Second.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? We are adjourned 7:23. Thank you.